Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Later, we'll be hearing from the new leader of UK Healthcare. Dr. Mark Newman is heading up the healthcare arm of the Kentucky flagship university at a time when the medical landscape certainly is shifting. Dr. Newman with us shortly. But first, we've heard from Republican leaders and from some stakeholders in the pension debate in Kentucky, including the KEA. Now, House Democratic leader Rocky Adkins is here. For years, he rounded up votes as a powerful leader of the House majority. The Republican romp in Kentucky last year left Adkins as the floor leader of the minority party, the loyal opposition. We'll talk about how he thinks the pension shortfalls should be addressed, what he sees coming up in the 2018 legislative session, and whether he is considering running for governor in 2019, as there's a lot of talk out there. He also got to eat this week in a place named for him at Morehead State University. House Minority Leader Rocky Adkins is with us, and we welcome you. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be here, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So you get to celebrate the place named after you, and at the same time we were talking about you now find it tough to be in a minority over in Frankfort.
First of all, the Rocky Adkins Dining Commons, The Rock. I'm humbled and honored, to be very honest. Morehead State University is a part of me. It is a part of who I am, and many great experiences, and to have that honor is a tremendous honor, but it was a team effort. There's no question. I don't take that recognition individually. It was a team effort. You know, I kind of carry over playing my basketball at Morehead to the political arena as well, and you mentioned about the switch from the majority to the minority and how I've handled that. You know, in athletics, you learn how to handle defeat, and from that you learn from those defeats. But also, being a former point guard, I have learned well to adjust to game situations, and that's what I have done, going from majority leader to the minority leader or the Democratic leader in the House. So it has been an adjustment, but you are the loyal opposition. You do speak up for those that you believe are being left behind, and then you reach across the aisle when you can, and you try to reach compromise, and you try your best to have an impact on policy decisions that are being made and try to make the Commonwealth the best it can possibly be.
Well, let's talk about a major debate in our Commonwealth right now. There is no question that the pension shortfalls are real, that they're in the billions of dollars. The governor has made a proposal that he says will fix things over about a 30-year period. And while he is out there pushing it hard across the state, there is considerable pushback. Do you acknowledge that there is an enormous problem with the pensions and that may be holding Kentucky back?
Well, there's no question that it is an issue and it's a problem. There's no question that the pension issue, it needs to be addressed, but we have a difference on how to address it. The governor, his proposal, as you know, has created tremendous concern and opposition across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And that opposition and concern mainly has come from public employees, from teachers and retirees. The points of the bill that are being raised, of course, is the 3% reduction in salaries of all employees across state government and teachers that would go into a retirees' health fund. The 27-year cap that has been put on basically for teachers and also public employees is a big concern. Reaching 27, defined benefit would end, and then you would go basically to a 401A type or a defined contribution. Also, the change that has been made on all new hires that would come into the system would go to a 401A as well, which has caused some great concerns, especially in the education field. Many superintendents and teachers and people of concern in the education field feel this could be devastating to public education. That many of their employees who are reaching 27, that we may see a mass exit of teachers who will leave the field and retire. 11,400 of those teachers could retire today, which we know is 20% of the teaching workforce that could cause a crisis in public education. And then the struggle of trying to recruit new teachers into the field without having a attractive retirement benefit plan is also a big concern. Attracting quality the type of teachers we want in the classroom in the future.
You have 36 members of your caucus.
Yes.
Do they all oppose the governor's proposal?
The 36 members of our caucus, as we study and as we look at this bill today, all stand opposed to the legislation as it reads today. Many concerns from public hearings and public forums throughout the Commonwealth, from Ashland to Paducah. Our 36 members today stand opposed to the bill as it reads.
Would you like to have seen this worked out in a bipartisan way? Would you like to have been at the table for the talks about a bill?
Well, Bill, you know, the 31 years that I have been in the Kentucky House of Representatives, I have always tried to reach across the aisle for compromise. That's how our system works best. But this issue, I have not been invited as the Democratic leader to the first meeting to have any input on what went into this bill or what it might look like as it was presented to the public. So yes, we would have liked to have been to the table, to had some input, and possibly would have been able to maybe head off some of the controversy, but there is a tremendous amount of concern, a tremendous amount of opposition. In my opinion, this bill is not good, not only for public employees, not only for teachers or retirees, but it's not a good bill as we move forward for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. You
have raised concerns about addressing the pensions before the revenue scenario is known going into next year. Does this need to be done, in your view, together, or should a revenue bill come first, a tax reform bill, if that is to happen?
Well, Bill, let me say that I think it's really difficult to separate the two. To separate tax reform from pension reform, in my opinion, is very difficult. And even the governor said that early on and then made the decision to separate the two and try to handle tax reform during the regular session. Let me just say that, you know, our caucus is not just sitting here and saying we're against. We believe that we have a position that ought to be looked at. Our position is that we ought to keep the pension system that we got, but we ought to fund it. And here's a place we could start. We've got $13 billion in tax loopholes and exemptions that need to be looked at. That's $2.5 billion more than our entire general fund budget. Surely we could lay that on the table, and if we could only reduce that 10% without hurting business or industry, we don't want to do that. But those things that we could look at, if we could only reduce that by 10%, that'd be $1.3 billion that we could put into pensions.
As you know, that includes food and medicine and some other popular exemptions in the state. Would you go so far as to support lifting those?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I would be for examining, looking at the $13 billion that we do exempt, see which ones of those may not be in a competitive situation that would not be harmful, that we could look at. And if we could do that, it would be $1.3 billion. And we have staff now kind of scanning the $13 billion that have not been looked at in some time, and lay that on the table and see if we can do something that's not regressive, that's not harmful, and that potential could be there. But that's $1.3 billion where we could keep the pension system that we have, but also fund it in a responsible manner to be able to move forward.
There have been some out there who have proposed alternative revenue for the state. Legalizing marijuana has come up. Casinos have been mentioned as a possible option, having a land-based casinos, or at least allowing a vote on that in Kentucky, and so have higher taxes. What should be done given the major shortfalls that we have even right now with the current budget?
Well, I think that everything has to be looked at. There's no question, but at the end of the day, you have to be realistic in, you know, what can pass. And there's already been opposition to expanding gaming on the ballot from the majority. I think legalization of marijuana is something that continues to be looked at, and the medical community continues to need to look at how medical research marijuana can help those individuals like myself. I'm a 22-year cancer survivor myself, and you know, seizures and those type of things. So I think when the medical community continues to step forward, some of those things can be looked at. We would hope that our economy would continue to improve. We would hope that the unemployment rate would go down. We would hope that revenues would do like it did over the last month or so. We had a $200 million shortfall in the first quarter of this fiscal year, and now the last estimate that came out by the budget director and others have got us at $150 million shortfall. So I am hopeful that that trend continues and we get our budget back in shape through an improved economy, through job quality and expansion throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Just to finish up on the pensions so quickly, do you support, and you've talked about you would be willing to work and maybe try to find a compromise, do you support the idea of a 401k-like system for future hires, even though you've said you do not favor switching people over mid-career?
I don't support that. I think it's a bad move, and here's the reason why. I think we can sustain the system. We started back in 2008. You know, we had two downturns in the economy. The stock market crashed twice from 2002 to 2008 or 9. That had an impact on our pension funds and system. We basically passed a bill in 2008 to start a reform of the system. We passed another bill in 2013 that had a cash hybrid type system where we got 50,000 employees in it now, but it's still a form of a defined benefit. I think it's a bad move for public employees and teachers especially to move them into a 401A. I think it is from the standpoint of recruitment, getting quality people in government agencies, and also quality teachers in the classroom. It would be detrimental and devastating to public education, in my opinion.
Was it a mistake on the part of the legislature to not fully fund the pensions going back over the last 15, 20 years?
Well, what happened was this. As we went in out of the late 90s, our pension systems were above 100% funded. We went into the dot-com crash of the market that happened, which impacted that. What the legislature has always done since I've been there, we basically have dealt with assumptions of what needs to go in the budget to fund the pension system. And we have passed what has been recommended in those budgets by the governor. It has been Democrat and Republican governors. So what has been recommended to us is what we have passed. Now, we have corrected that. In 2013, we passed a bill which said the ARC must be funded, the full amount. And we did that in the 14 budget, and we did it again in the 16 budget as well. So with those adjustments being made, the Pension Oversight Board and the change that was made in 13 as well, I think has set us on a positive path. Now, we got to have the proper oversight over how that money is being invested. It's just like a private pension account. If the money's not invested properly, we got to have a return on that investment.
Well, with House Democratic Leader Rocky Adkins on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers, we'll continue with him in just a moment. And later, the new head of UK Healthcare, Dr. Mark Newman. It's coming up on WKYT. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers as we continue our visit right now with the House Democratic Leader Rocky Adkins, and we are discussing several issues today. There's a report just as we were taping this for a weekend air that House Speaker Jeff Hoover settled a sexual harassment case involving a legislative staff member. Do you have a reaction to that, the report by the Courier-Journal?
Well, the only reaction I have is I know as much about that as you do. It's the report I read in the newspaper is all that I know about that incident as we speak here today, and the kind of the outline of that in that newspaper report is what I know about the case at this time. What I would say is that there's been positive steps that have been made both in the public and the private sector to give victims of sexual harassment, sexual assault, the avenues that they need to be able to report incidents that may happen in the workforce, the avenues for protection, the avenues that need to be basically sought. And those, I think, advancements have been very positive for those who may be subject to sexual harassment. But as far as the individual case that you mentioned, I really don't know enough about it to comment on it this morning, but I would say in the overall that very positive steps have been made to have a zero tolerance in the workforce for sexual harassment or sexual assault, and I think that's a positive attitude and a positive position and a positive avenue for us to take in the future.
Would you see that as an ongoing issue potentially in the future?
Well, I don't know. We'll just have to see how all of this case and this incident shakes out as we move forward. I was, as I said, the story broke last night as we're taping this morning, and the details of that case, all I would say is that sexual harassment in the workplace should not and will not be tolerated. And I think all of the safeguards that need to be put in place, very positive steps have been taken over the last several years, both as we see now in the private sector and the public sector. And I think that is the avenue and that is the direction that should be taken in the future and will be.
Other than the budget, which is going to be, this is what we call the budget session coming up in this even-eared session, where that's you get that basic document that basically runs state government for a 2-year period. What are the other issues you see coming up in the session?
Well, you know, the budget session is the 60-day session, and Bill, there will be a total of 800 or 900 bills that will be introduced, and that will keep everybody busy. But of course, the big issue will be the budget, and the other issue will be the decision of whether the governor and Republican leadership, who are in the majority, will take on tax reform. Those will be huge issues as we start into this next session. I think the opioid epidemic that we have across Kentucky has got to be a major issue and a top priority as we move forward into this next session, as we look how we can continue to combat the issue of addiction, the issue of drugs, illegal, coming in to Kentucky. And I think we've made great strides in the past on that issue. But I think the overriding issues are along those lines of the budget and tax reform and other issues that will come out of those 800 or 900 bills that come forth. And we got to continue to focus and concentrate on how we continue to build a strong economy and create the kind of jobs our people need and deserve. And we got to continue to stand up and fight hard and support public education in Kentucky.
You have been traveling a lot lately. People have made note of that, and you have told many that you are looking at the governor's race in 2019. As we sit here today, where are you on that?
Well, Bill, I would say to you, as I travel Kentucky, I have two purposes in mind, really. As I travel Kentucky, I am getting a lot of encouragement to run for governor, and I will tell you today that we are giving it serious consideration. Because of the encouragement that's coming from Ashland to Paducah, and it's coming from people, everyday, ordinary people on the ground, that encouragement, I'm giving it serious consideration. But in saying that, I would say this: I've been given a job to do as the Democratic leader, and that's my main focus, is being the Democratic leader. And in doing that, while I travel Kentucky, I'm trying to recruit the best and the quality of candidate that we need to run in 2018, with the objective of taking back the House of Representatives. I think that is a doable goal. I think it's achievable. So as we talk about the encouragement I'm getting to run for governor, and we're giving it serious consideration, my main focus is on the quality of recruitment of candidates that we can get to run in 2018. I'm seeing more energy on the ground across Kentucky than I've ever seen, from policy issues that have been passed here in Kentucky. This pension issue is just an example. Charter schools was another example. Repeal of prevailing wage. There is a lot of energy on the ground. So yes, I'm giving it serious consideration, and yes, as my role as Democratic leader, I'm recruiting quality candidates to run in 2018. While we try to take back the House of Representatives, and I think that's an achievable goal.
You think you can flip the House again?
Oh, I think that there's every possibility to do that, and we're making every effort that we can to see that that's a possibility, and a possibility that will happen.
If you go forward on the campaign for governor, would it be uphill for a lawmaker from a rural area in northeastern Kentucky?
Well, you know, even though I've been in the political arena for a while, I'm still kind of a new face to a lot of people, and I think I speak the same kind of language as a lot of other people. It's about common sense, on the ground, kind of common sense policy that people want to see, somebody they feel like they can approach and talk to. And so yes, I mean, I think that if we take that challenge, I think you've known me for a long time. You know, if I take a challenge, I'm in it to win it. And we would make every effort to do that. And I think regardless of what part of the state you're from, if you are willing to do the work, if you're willing to be face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball with people across Kentucky, and people learn what you stand for, who you are, and what you're about, I think all things are possible.
Rocky Adkins, the House Democratic leader, thank you, and potential candidate for governor. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll be back on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers with the new head of UK Healthcare, Dr. Mark Newman, with us next. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. There is new leadership for UK Healthcare, which operates the Chandler Medical Center, Kentucky's medical school, and a network of clinics and other facilities around the state. He is coming back to his home state of Kentucky knowing the enormous healthcare challenges we face. High rates of cancer, diabetes, smoking, obesity, and heart disease are well documented. The healthcare landscape is confusing these days with political gridlock on how to move forward on either tweaking or repealing the Affordable Care Act. So into that environment comes Dr. Mark F. Newman, who takes his new post after a distinguished career in medicine and healthcare management, and he is back home. And we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for coming.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Right off the bat, I assume that your last tour of duty was at Duke, so you have the right shades of blue.
That's
now.
right. I got the Pantones all fixed. I did. I changed the Pantone, so I'm ready to go. No, it's good. I'm glad to be here, and it's a good shade of blue. It's a good shade of blue here.
You're telling me you grew up in Owensboro. I know you're glad to be home. Why did you want to come back to the Commonwealth and take over the complex and highly important mission of running UK healthcare?
Well, I think you hit on a few of them. All the challenges that you talked about are really opportunities. What can we do to really improve the health care of a state? What can we do to improve the health of a state? And I think what's happened with the trajectory at UK healthcare over the last 10 years, both the growth, the quality, again, the national reputation, set a really good foundation that we could, again, take the next step to try to make a difference, to reach even further out into the state, to try not only to take care of people, but to educate them on how we can do, a better lifestyle and enhance the quality of life for people across the Commonwealth.
What do you like about what you have seen so far with UK healthcare?
I think the thing is I go around, and one of the key things I'm working on early on is going around and talking to people and understanding, because when you've seen one system, you've seen it. And I think the thing that I've been most appreciative of and proud of, they're truly excited about their role being the university, the healthcare for Kentucky, being the place where anybody can come from across the state to get the very best care. And they're excited and they want to continue and expand on that. And I think that's a key opportunity.
We talked about the major health challenges for Kentucky, as
right.
we were just mentioning. We treat a lot of diseases in Kentucky and deal with a lot of things. And people, unfortunately, die younger than they might if they
right.
had better information, better prevention. How do we do a better job with that?
Well, I think it starts as a couple of things. I think education is always the first component of that. And how do we get, more information about, again, healthy eating, healthy lifestyles, and components out to that across the country. And I think that starts young with our education. I think we can also work, as we think about working out with the county extension agents and, taking UK as a whole. And again, more and more education out to those individuals and supporting educational programs throughout all 120 counties, and that's kind of what we would like to see.
How important is it to you that you push UK's mission out into the state with these outpatient clinics? I know more people are being able to stay closer to home to get some of the care. You're managing, or some say exploring, some options that may not be public at this point about looking at some other facilities. As you do that, is that the goal now, is to be more present out in the state?
I think it's essential, first off, we want to, enhance the quality of the care that's delivered across the state. And some of that will be helping some of those patients stay local. How do we take some of our expertise and get it out to those local hospitals through telehealth, through electronic consults and other mechanisms, because the best care is local, if we can keep it local. That being said, we have to be, again, that backup, that capability to be able to facilitate that. Now, one of the things we're doing is we're going to be opening additional 4-year medical schools, one starting in Bowling Green next year, the next year in northern Kentucky, and hopefully in eastern Kentucky at Moorhead the year after. And the idea is, how do we train enough specialists to be out there, again, training people from Kentucky that want to stay in Kentucky and work with that?
Well, there's the question. How do we keep them here?
Well, again, if you look at, again, the people we train are typically the people that we keep. And so that's a key thing. We have to train, again, the medical school is one. The other thing will be residency programs and things where they train and they get their expertise here. I think we have to expand on our fellowships and the capability for people to train and be here and develop that expertise here within our community. And I think it's easier for them at that point to stay.
You have to make all of these plans and projections about the future and so forth without really knowing what the landscape in healthcare is going to be. We know we're in a political environment right now where we just really don't know where we're going with the insurance and that sort of thing. What should we be doing in America as a goal for healthcare?
Well, to me, and I think,
yes,
again, the advice, we're always focused on the patient. And to me, one of the key things is how do we continue to have, regardless of whatever path we go down, how do we continue to have the best access for patients? Because if they can have access to care, especially early care, we can prevent more, treat more, and the quality improves. And so how do we continue to convince and look at, if there are compromises to make, how can we make them in a way that minimizes the negative impact on our population? I think that's a key thing for us. And the more we can help, again, help legislators, help other people, inform them as much as we can, that's a key component for us. I mean, we're not the decision makers, but hopefully we can provide that kind of information that can help the decision.
A few seconds left. Do you enjoy the balance of patient care, teaching, and research, all of which go on at UK?
That's what makes academic health centers great. That, again, that intersection between teaching, research, education, making tomorrow better than today, that's the exciting part. How do we make tomorrow better than today for not only for our patients, but for the great people that work at UK and UK Healthcare?
All right, Dr. Newman, thank you for coming in, and good luck in the future at UK Healthcare.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers, and we hope you make it a good week ahead.